What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, the bad news continues on for Microsoft and Xbox now, with new concerns being raised around what should be a very important studio for them, since they're in charge of the franchise that's been with Xbox, since the beginning. We'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony, who they themselves put out some more information around their plans for next generation that might be a bit different than people were expecting. And we also have some of our first sales for Ghost of Yotei in Japan, as well as maybe an early look at Nintendo going in to Pokemon Legends ZA's launch. All of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. We're here every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, keeping you up to date on all the gaming news. So if you stop by in the morning, you don't get a notification, just be aware there should be a video here for you in the morning going over gaming news. And we're going to start today with Battlefield 6. Yesterday, reviews did go up, and we can see this over on Metacritic. It's currently sitting at an 84 on the PlayStation 5, an 88 on the Xbox, and an 84 on the PC. The PlayStation 5 did have the largest number of reviews, so we'll check in there. At the top, they had But Why Though giving it a 95, saying Battlefield 6 is a giant leap forward for the franchise, returning it to the peak of online first-person shooters. Invader gave it a 91, saying Battlefield 6 marks a triumphant comeback for DICE, a stunning blend of large-scale warfare, explosive destructibility, and teamwork-driven chaos. I was looking through it, and many of these reviews are just focusing in on the multiplayer, which you would expect for Battlefield. However, IGN gave the game a 5 and mostly focused in on what sounded like a 5-hour, somewhat bare bones experience for the single player. Unfortunate, but I understand people who are buying Battlefield are probably buying it mostly for the multiplayer and may never even fire up the campaign. Me, though, I like the idea of the campaign with the destructibility and see what cool things they can do there. So while it probably will just be a 4 or 5 hour experience for me even, and I'll mostly be onto the multiplayer, it would be nice to see effort just put into it, because the single player experience is something that'll live on, we would assume, after the servers get shut down sometime in the far future. Also, we got a bit more of an explanation from Nintendo around the Close to You shorts that they released. This we can see on their official account, where they say, "We hope you enjoyed the 2 Close to You videos released on October 7th and 8th. The second video is available on Nintendo Today, a free app available on your smart device. These are the first short films created by Nintendo Pictures. Nintendo Pictures will continue to explore new creative possibilities through video content." This is what we kind of figured, that Nintendo Pictures, who was previously Dynamo Pictures, had created these shorts. We're really sure why is this then leading up to something where they're going to do an entire new Pikmin series. It is hard to say, because it seems like they're just kind of leaving it at this. And also the release is kind of odd. Okay, they do one on YouTube and other social media platforms and Nintendo Today, where the Pikmin were all invisible. Even though we all sort of figured that's what it was for the most part, it wasn't there in the video. But then they release the next video 24 hours later, and it has the Pikmin, but only on Nintendo Today. And they're also going around blocking and striking any uploads of it, which even like just clips or images. It's very strange the way that they're doing this, and I'm not really sure what the future holds exactly for, I guess here maybe Pikmin, a Pikmin animated series. Almost seems like an experiment Nintendo decided to run, but I guess we'll keep an eye out for any other random shorts that are dropped from Nintendo Pictures. Oh, and we did get a release date for Skate Story, this with a new trailer that they dropped online. It is coming out December 8th. That'll be on PC, PlayStation 5, and Switch 2. They also gave us some more details, like over on PlayStation Blog. They did talk about the board itself being worn down depending on the different tricks you're doing. So a board slide will sort of rough up the middle of the board, or any stickers you may have, I guess similar with the trucks or anything else that's impacting basically with the different tricks you're doing. They also talk about the light bar on the DualSense controller interacting depending on what you're doing in the game. I guess just lights flickering on and off or changing colors. And then the way that you damage enemies or do more damage is based around the score multiplier for your line. And I think the game itself just looks really interesting and unique in the skateboarding genre or world for games. And I do like to see what new ideas some of these companies have, because we have our Tony Hawks and our skates and a few other adventure games. This just looks completely out of left field, and I'm really excited to check it out. later on, actually, in the first week of December when it releases. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Microsoft, who's had a crazy couple of weeks here online. Of course, with the PR angle, because, well, they've raised the price of their Xbox console twice this year, so far, we'll even say. And then when they played around with the Game Pass tiers and everyone realized, oh, okay, Game Pass Ultimate is now $30, and that's what you need for day one releases on console and everything. It hasn't gone over great, right? And now we're seeing some struggles and some new concerns raised around Halo Studios. And look, for me, it's like, man, Halo fans, we just can't catch a break right now. Even a couple of weeks out from the Halo Championship, World Championships, when we assume we're going to see something new out of Halo Studios. Of course, this just has to happen. So let's take a look. This, we can see, posted by Rebs Gaming, says Halo's veteran art director of 17 years suddenly left Halo Studios and posted a very concerning message which hints at major issues. This comes less than a month after former Chief of Staff Melissa Boone left. Apparently she went to Riot Games. Now, Rebs Gaming says they can confirm that Halo Studios has leadership issues. So let's take a look at this message that was left on LinkedIn by Glenn Israel. It says, as of today, after 17 long years, I am officially no longer contributing to the Halo universe. Think about that, 17 years. Going back to like 2007, 2008. Like glory days of Halo, right? You go back that far. They say there is a little more I can say for the moment, though I intend to share this particular story in its entirety when it is absolutely safe to do so next year. In the meantime, I have a message for anyone and everyone who needs to hear it. So first off, when they say it's safe to share the story, they say a year from now. Clearly, there's some sort of non-disclosure agreement that's in play that they had to sign, I guess, on the way out, or it's just, it was in their contract, and that's like in effect now. So this seems to be something, again, we'll hear about later on when all the legal stuff is cleared up. But they go on to say, I know that the state of our industry seems dire, but never forget that you are free to choose. No illusion of security, nor promise of wealth or fame or power is worth trading away your health, your dignity, your ethics, or values. And no one can force you to. Stay strong, take evidence when necessary, and find where you belong. As always, I'll be here if you need to talk. That's incredibly ominous, very dramatic, and I'm really curious as to what exactly happened here. I mean, this sounds like just a bad breakup, basically, and we gotta wait at least a year to find out more about it. And here's the thing, in a couple of weeks, Halo Studios will at least have a chance to show off what they're working on. And now that's basically what we need to see with Halo Studios, because we've already heard about all the stuff that happened with 343, and they shifted over to Halo Studios and leadership changes. Now there's new issues with leadership that's come into play. And it's amazing to me that Microsoft allows their studio that is solely focused on the Halo franchise, and that should be a very protected franchise for Microsoft. And we've seen what's happened. It's just been ugly for a long time now. I mean, really you have to go back to basically the days of Bungie being there when things were good with Halo and exciting, and it was fun being a Halo fan. It's pretty hard to be a Halo fan now, I will tell you that from personal experience. So going back to the old days of Halo 3 and even Halo Reach, those are the last times I really remember the franchise being fun and exciting, and like, we had that glimmer of hope when Halo Infinite was not only first shown, but then first released. And then we got to look at their work and we're like, hold on, where's Team Slayer? Why is there no Team Slayer here? That was a huge red flag. And well, there we are. Halo Infinite now is in a much better place. It just took forever to get there. And now people have already written it off and they're not going back. First impressions are very important here, and yeah, it might be a good idea for them to do a remake of Halo 1. You know, again, the game that people absolutely love. It's one of the biggest releases you can say, even in history for, I mean, obviously for Microsoft, but just gaming in general. People look back on that game in the Halo universe and they're like, yeah, that was like peak Halo for many people. So here's hoping they don't mess it up. But when I hear about leadership issues like this, I do then think about the much larger projects that are being worked on. A remake's one thing, like the kind of the skeleton is already there and they're building on top of that. It's when you then get into more of the creative scenarios that you have to do from scratch for what would follow up with Halo. that's where it gets a little dicey, and these leadership concerns would become much more prominent. So, well, apparently we're going to find out more information as we go along, since there are other reports, I'll say, that are in the works, could work to confirm, and also could work to shed more light on this whole situation. So, just keep an eye out for it. Next up, let's talk about the Famitsu sales charts. This does give us our first look at Ghost of Yote's sales, as Sony and Sucker Punch have been very quiet around this, despite the game now being out for just over a week. We've seen Sony get out there with the fun little card, the artwork, and like, oh, we sold this many millions. They haven't said anything about Ghost of Yote, at least at the time of this recording. Could change now or today or next week or something. As of now, though, really nothing, no mention. Well, we can see this. This is over on install base forums, and we have Ghost of Yote at the top, 120,196 copies. Some context here, that is actually quite a bit lower than Ghost of Tsushima when that debuted back in 2020, 5 years ago or so. And we know the digital-physical split has only grown in digital's favor, just overall completely for Sony and their platform. Still, this is a pretty significant drop-off from Tsushima. That did more than 210,000 units in its first week back then. Here at 120,000, you're down this is the 43 or 44%, something like that. So significant drop-off. However, I will also point out this is the biggest opening we've seen in Japan for a Sony published game, like a first party game. This is it right here, 120,196. That is the high watermark for the PS5. Now we can also then go to number 2, that being Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, 48,265. That would be like the lowest we've seen for a 3D Mario game. But I mean, one, they're double pack remasters of older 3D Mario games, right? And 2, I think we all kind of see it as overpriced, and I think also the market's viewing as overpriced, and many are probably like, oh, I'm going to buy Mario Galaxy 2 digitally and I'm good. So I'm wondering how Nintendo is going to report sales of that for their investors. They split them up or what, but I will find out later on, a few months from now or whatever. Then we have Final Fantasy Tactics Ivalice Chronicles at 3 on the Switch, 41,333. That's a good opening for Tactics. Then we have Mario Kart World, Final Fantasy Tactics, again, this on the PS5, another 24,138. Wow, that's actually, that means that overall here, we're seeing a 65,000 unit opening for Tactics. That is quite good. Digimon Story Time Stranger on the PS5 coming in at 23,779. And that's low. It is. So from what I can understand, apparently not many copies were shipped out to Japan, is the word going around. And that's why that number is a bit lower. As we saw on Steam, it did quite well for concurrent player count. Oh, we do have Final Fantasy Tactics on the Switch too. And I just want to point out 12,363. So really almost 78,000 of an opening for Tactics. Good stuff there. I mean, an awesome Final Fantasy. Fully recommend everyone check that out. Then we have Silent Hill F, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and Minecraft rounding out the top 10. Moving over to the hardware, we have the Switch 2 at the top, 44,439, continuing the trend of what seems to be whatever they ship, they sell, because it's like capped at just under 45,000 units here. Then we have the PS5 jumping up to 27,344. No doubt because Ghost of Yote was there at retail alongside of it. And that is kind of the point of these first-party releases, is to also push hardware. Seems like Ghost of Yote, at least just from the trend here, was able to do that, jumping at minimum just over 10,000 units week over week. Then we have the Switch 1, 24,109 units. The Xbox Series, 837, and the PS4 still managed to sell another 19 somehow. So just going off the chart here for Ghost of Yote, again, not a massive opening for it, not even able to really come anywhere near Ghost of Tsushima's opening physically in Japan, but it is getting harder and harder to read these charts, as we've seen with many of these PlayStation 5 releases in Japan. As I mentioned, that's the high watermark right now. Ghost of Yote is the #1 PlayStation published game in Japan for this generation for the PS5. So it's difficult because the way that digital has really taken over. And at this point, we probably just need to hear from Sony if they're prepared to release some kind of statement with sales figures. Otherwise, we're going to have to look towards Circana whenever we get that information for October, and we have to wait a while for that since we just got information for August. So that's kind of where we are right now with Yote, just kind of hanging out waiting for Sony to say something. Otherwise, though, the PS5 saw a good jump, and Right now, where the Switch 2 is selling whatever they can ship, something tells me Nintendo's preparing a pretty good amount of Switch 2s to ship out for Pokemon Legends ZA, and we'll get information around that, and I'm sure the bundles and stuff as we go along. Not next week, the following week. Something tells me, though, gonna be a pretty big number. Next up, let's talk about Sony and next generation, as we did get a new video where we had AMD and Sony together talking about some of their breakthroughs and their strategies for the next generation platform. We can see the video here. Now, you can see we have AMD's Jack One and Sony's Mark Cerny here, and they broke down 4 key aspects that they're ready to share. So machine learning and neural acceleration, clearly big focuses, right? The idea of PSSR and FSR is like the binding components of this partnership. Now, Sony is also contracting out chip development with AMD, but this is why they were doing this Project Amethyst, was to develop more and more around PSSR and FSR for the future. They also talked about neuro arrays. So here's the thing, we're going to go over a couple of terms that just it sounds like jargon, but stick with me for a minute here. Neuro arrays, they say, allows compute units within the GPU to team up, sharing data and processing information together like a single AI engine. This leads to bigger ML or machine learning models, less overhead, greater efficiency, and more scalability, enabling advancements in upscaling and denoising technologies. They also talk about Radiance cores for ray tracing. Radiance cores being a new dedicated hardware block designed for unified light transport, handling ray tracing and path tracing in real time. So really just more efficient pipeline for ray tracing, allows the CPU and GPU to focus on other things outside of just the struggles that we see at times with ray tracing now. And something that I thought was really interesting here, universal compression. So this system evaluates and compresses every piece of data going to memory. So not just textures, but it dramatically reduces bandwidth usage. And this allows the GPU to deliver more detailed, higher frame rates, and greater efficiency with synergies for neural arrays and Radiance cores. Ties it all together there. Now, here's the thing. I'm going through this, and again, a lot of jargon, but there was one common theme, and Cerny kinda alluded to it here. He specifically mentioned the system is going to punch above the paper specs. Basically what you see when they turn in the sheet and you're like, oh, it has this much RAM, this is the frequency, and so many cores. What I'm hearing is they're going to do a lot of stuff outside of just put a bigger GPU, strapping a bigger GPU to this thing to be more efficient and achieve similar goals without brute forcing the whole thing. And that isn't a new concept, as we're seeing it with something like the PlayStation 5 Pro. While that does just have a more powerful GPU as they went through, it's also doing a lot when it comes to machine learning and PSSR upscaling. And that, I believe, is what we're going to see with the PlayStation 6, because they do have to be cost sensitive with the whole thing. And I think that comes back more to them developing these different ways to upscale games and really get an image that it's difficult to tell the difference. And that's what we're going to get to between native resolution and these upscaled resolutions. So we'll hear about some crazy, low, ugly resolutions, I'm sure, but then they're just upscaled to 4K or who knows, maybe 8K, and it's difficult to tell the difference because of the advancements that have been made with all these neural networks and stuff. So again, a lot of jargon. Really just take away, they're looking to build a more efficient PlayStation 6, at least from the sense of not trying to brute force with a massive GPU in there. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a interesting game that popped up on the PlayStation Store. This we can see though over on VGC, where they say another apparent Animal Crossing clone has appeared on the PlayStation Store following the removal of a similar game earlier this year. So let's take a look at this Animal Crossing. Yeah, okay, hold on. Animal Village Online. Interesting. Now I saw a couple screenshots floating around. I didn't really see any on the PlayStation Store though when I went to look. They have this scheduled for 2027. The publisher is Wisnu Suderman. Okay, and it's a simulation adventure. It looked very, very similar. A lot of inspiration from Animal Crossing here, right? Well, their other game that you can look up, Wisnu Suderman again, 2026 Rooted Survival. Looks like a lot of inspiration from The Last of Us. Huh. Okay. Well, GameSpot managed to get a response. They reached out to GamePock, which CEO, I guess that's their company. Wisnu Suderman is the CEO. Anyway, Suderman responded that both games are real. Uh-huh. All right, then. I mean, you look at Anime Village. Okay, Anime Village Online is what it's called. You look at that, you go, yeah, Nintendo is, people are already posting on the PlayStation 5 subreddit, like, yeah, Nintendo's gonna sue these people into oblivion. This thing coming down. And it does look very close, clearly, in terms of the character designs and the aesthetics. And we've already seen Nintendo go after Palworld for things that aren't related necessarily to the different creature designs. They went after them for different gameplay mechanics. But then we've seen Sony go after Light of Motirum or whatever, because that was very, very similar looking to Horizon. This looks like that case of, yeah, it looks very similar to Animal Crossing. And then we hear that the CEO is the person that's, like, they didn't put the company, they put their name there. And there's another one that looks just like the Last of Us. Doesn't seem like a great idea. And this isn't the first one, as I mentioned. There was another game similar to this that was up earlier this year, and that got pulled down. So something tells me Anime Village Online probably won't be coming out and will be a similar situation where it just disappears from the PlayStation Store here in the next couple of weeks. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, how much will Microsoft's next generation Xbox cost? Wow, the majority of people say it's $1,000 or more. Okay, then we have $800 would be the 31%, which, I mean, that they have an $800 system on the market now, the 2 terabyte Xbox Series X Galaxy Edition. 17% though say it's $700 or less, and then $900, 13%. You know, I'm trying to figure out where Microsoft is with subsidizing the console, because there was word going around that Microsoft was trying to get that Xbox Series, or that ROG Xbox Ally X handheld down in price. They didn't want to launch it at $1,000. Apparently they couldn't make it work, and here it is now at $1,000. So they do have at least some price sensitivity, but we see what's going on with the Xbox Series. They don't seem interested in subsidizing that. So would they be interested in subsidizing the next generation? That's where it's really up in the air, because $1,000 system sounds crazy, but there are some apparent leaked specs going around, and I think I'm going to cover that maybe over the weekend, because it sounds really, really weird, and I question if they're building an Xbox right now, because it kind of sounds like they're putting something else together. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Skynox, who says, rip to Double Fine, because being owned by Microsoft in this economy and not making all the money means goodbye. So the thing I will give Double Fine is they're releasing games, which is good. We have Keeper coming up on the Psychonauts 2, and that's great. And I'm sure there's another game they're working on now. So they seem to be a studio that can work on multiple games, I guess, at once. But they're also not like the most expensive studio to have. I don't think they're putting out projects, like, I don't think Keeper is this $100+ million project. So they are able to keep their budgets, it feels like, in check. And because of that, to me, it's something that Microsoft, I'd like to think, would keep around for that creativity aspect, since they do need a lot of variety for Game Pass as well. Sure, it's nice, I'm sure from their mindset of, let's have a lot of these multiplayer live service games we can launch into Game Pass and then have additional spend. Think of something like Call of Duty that's massive for them, past the initial purchase price or the downloading Game Pass. But you also need those games that you can put in there and say, hey, look at this is different, you haven't seen this before, you should check it out in Game Pass. Or even just sell it, as that's a game I'm sure that they'll be able to sell on multiple different platforms in the future anyway. So I think Double Fine does fill a role, at least for now, within Microsoft. So I would be surprised if they decided to shut them down, but at this point, who knows what's going on with Microsoft and Xbox and what the future holds. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you want to listen to the latest episode of Click R3. We recorded it last night. I'll leave that in a video right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.